Hi, it's Katrina. From the search for a missing tomb to the evolution of the plague that may just come back to bite us, here are 10 wild discoveries that reveal secrets of the ancient past. Number 10. Mysterious Egyptian Chest. A team of archaeologists recently discovered a mysterious stone chest from the ruins of an old funerary complex in Egypt. The discovery was made near the extremely famous Hatshepsut temple, indicating there might be a previously undiscovered tomb hiding somewhere in the area. Queen Hatshepsut was her father's true heir, but as is custom in ancient Egypt, she was wed to her brother Thutmose II. He was actually overshadowed by his wife/sister in 1479 BC. She was more powerful, more popular, and he appears to have suffered from some type of disease, making him weak. She declared herself pharaoh and often wore the characteristic male pharaonic robes and jewelry. Very few monuments and historical records exist of her husband. Instead, most reliefs and hieroglyphics show her in charge of ruling the country and managing trade along with her son, Thutmose III. The mummy of Thutmose II was discovered in 1881, although his tomb has never been found. The chest just may hold some clues. When archaeologists opened it, they found several packages wrapped in a thick canvas, one of them containing the skeletal remains of a sacrificed goose, another containing an egg from a goose, and the third containing the egg of an ibis. These were obviously used for some kind of funerary ritual, though historians can't quite say how. The name of Pharaoh Thutmose II was also found engraved within the box, suggesting the lost artifact had been part of his burial chamber. The temple complex of Hatshepsut is one of the most visited sites in Egypt, while archaeologists are still searching for the tomb of Thutmose II. Number 9. The Dragon Man. In a shocking new discovery, archaeologists have uncovered an ancient human fossil that could be revealing some serious secrets of our ancient past. The discovery comes in the form of an ancient cranium, currently housed in the Hebei Geo-University Geoscience Museum in China. The skull is the largest type of Homo skull ever found, and scientists now believe it represents a new species of human named Homo longi, or the Dragon Man. The findings suggest that the Dragon Man could be our closest hominid relative, not Neanderthals. It has the potential to dramatically change our understanding of human evolution. The fossil of the Dragon Man is the most complete human cranial fossil ever found on Earth, according to Qiang Ji, professor of paleontology. Here's how the cranium is different from ours. It was so large that it could hold a very similar brain to what we have. However, it had some pretty strange characteristics. Its eye sockets were square instead of circular, it had a very wide mouth, and its teeth were way bigger than ours. It had great big hippopotamus chompers towards the back. The Dragon Man did indeed share some human features, but it was more of a beast than a man. In fact, the Dragon Man could be the missing piece of the puzzle in human evolution we've been looking for, or what you may know as the missing link. The Dragon Man may have been the bridge between ape and man, or at least one evolutionary step along the way. This hominid creature lived about 146,000 years ago in a small community of other dragon people, just like early Homo sapiens. They hunted, gathered fruits and vegetables, and probably even caught fish. There are multiple evolutionary lineages of Homo species and populations that coexisted in Asia, Africa, and Europe 200,000 to 140,000 years ago. Homo sapiens may have interacted with Homo longi. Using geochemical analysis, researchers have found that H. longi is one of our closest hominin relatives, even more closely related to us than Neanderthals. This discovery is completely redrawing our human tree of life, indicating that we separated from Neanderthals 400,000 years earlier than previously thought. Number 8. Ancient Israeli Textiles. Archaeologists have made a very rare and valuable find in Israel. While it may not be gold or silver, it was something even much more precious. They discovered scraps of textile dating back over 3,000 years, to the year 1000 BC, that contained ancient purple dye. Finding textiles this old is extremely difficult since most of the time it just disintegrates, and purple dye back in the day would have been much more valuable than gold or silver. The rich purple dye was so rare that it was described in the Bible called argamin. It was a unique color usually reserved for the most prestigious members of society, like royalty or priests. This is because the dye was pretty hard to come by, and the color was a bit too vibrant for everyday living. So where did these ancient people collect the purple dye? They got it from the glands of the living Murex Sea Snail. These little snails are found all along the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, making the villages and towns where they were found extremely wealthy. Another reason the newly discovered textiles are so fascinating is that they were collected near the Red Sea, meaning they traveled quite a bit of distance from where they were made. In fact, the presence of purple dye from the Mediterranean deep in the Israeli desert is proof of a more complicated social and trading system here than historians had previously accepted. It's hard to imagine these places being so well connected 3,000 years ago, but the people who lived here were obviously important and wealthy enough to get their hands on this precious purple. Number 7. Rare shackled skeletons. A skeleton found wearing shackles has shed some light on ancient British history. Specifically, the discovery has given historians an interesting glimpse into the unspoken history of slavery in Roman Britain. The skeleton was discovered secured with heavy iron chains around his ankles. He was also found thrown haphazardly into a ditch, probably as the last act of indignity after the man was already dead. He was found in Rutland, and archaeologists have dated him to being around 20 or 30 years old when he died, between 226 and 427 AD. Historians have known for a long time that when the Romans occupied Britain, they practiced slavery. This find is unique because it's one of the only pieces of physical evidence of the practice. But unfortunately, we will probably never know who this man was in life, as his skeleton holds no clues. He could have been an ordinary slave worker, a native Briton forced to work for the ruling Romans. Archaeologists determined this man was a slave and not simply a prisoner because they found evidence of a physically demanding life in his bones, as well as proof of injuries he had probably sustained during all his years of hard labor. Number 6. Dinosaur footprints. Another amazing discovery was made in the United Kingdom showing more interesting evidence of the ancient past. The footprints from 6 different species of dinosaur were discovered in Kent, dating back 110 million years. The discovery was made by one of the curators at the Hastings Museum and Art Gallery, as well as scientists working with the University of Portsmouth. They were found near some sea cliffs, which, thanks to the stormy coastal weather, are constantly being eroded and revealing new and impressive fossils. The area is part of the Folkestone Formation, and according to Professor of Paleobiology David Martill, this was the first time such footprints were found. But what kind of dinosaurs are we talking about? The footprints belong to the Ankylosaurus, which were devastating armored dinosaurs like living tanks, theropods, which were flesh-eating dinosaurs and vicious killers, and ornithopods, which were kind of like birds. The vast diversity of the dinosaurs shows a time when the British Isle was a paradise for dinos, specifically during the Cretaceous period. Way before people ever showed up, England was a dinosaur paradise. Number 5. Rare pre-pharaonic tombs. Archaeologists working in the Nile Delta of Egypt have uncovered 110 mysterious tombs that could be revealing some ancient secrets of 2 very important periods in Egypt's ancient history. Amazingly, some of these tombs date back before the kingdoms of the pharaohs, over 5,000 years ago. This was a time before pyramids, before pharaonic rule, and before Egypt was the great empire we know it as today. But here's the thing. Archaeologists also found tombs dating significantly later, to what is known as the Hyksos Period between 1650 and 1500 BC. This was a time when Asian migrants flooded Egypt and took over the Middle Kingdom. About 37 tombs were found from this time. These are 2 of the most misunderstood transitional periods in Egyptian history. The first was obviously an important time because the ancient people of Egypt were rising out of the Stone Age and embarking on a journey that would make them the great builders of the world. The second period, thousands of years later, is important because it shows a time when Egypt was usurped by migrants. It also shows how Asian migrants adjusted to the cultures of ancient Egyptian society. But what archaeologists don't know is why all these people are buried in the same place. It seems crazy to think a single cemetery would have been used for 2 distinct eras so far apart. This is a mystery that scientists still haven't been able to solve, but are looking into it right now. Number 4. A lost civilization. Flooding in Iran recently exposed the ruins of an ancient burial ground that may have been part of a culture from the Bronze Age, which flourished alongside Mesopotamia, but was ultimately lost to history. Archaeologists were first alerted to the ruins after antiques began flooding the local market out of nowhere. Pieces of jewelry, ceramics, and ancient board games featuring unknown artwork caught historians and archaeologists by surprise. Many of the objects depicted complex symbols that didn't seem to be from any known civilization. By 2002, archaeologists were panicked. They realized the local Iranians must have discovered a new prehistoric site and were pillaging it to sell the antiques. It would be the local police who finally solved the mystery. According to National Geographic, a coordinated investigation led to an immense conspiracy of artifact traffickers. It was from the traffickers that archaeologists were able to trace the origin of the artifacts to the Halil River Valley. Here they found the necropolis, previously buried but revealed thanks to unexpected flooding. They believe it belonged to the ancient Giraffed culture, and that it may have been the real cradle of civilization, even before the appearance of Sumer or Mesopotamia. Nobody knows exactly what happened to these ancient people, if they had large and impressive cities, or even when exactly they existed. But it looks as though they may be the oldest civilization anywhere in the Middle East, and unfortunately almost nothing about them is known. Number 3. The Anglo-Saxons. A new study of skeletal remains has revealed some pretty shocking information about the Anglo-Saxons. This study was done by Professor Keith Dobney at the University of Sydney, and he says the kingdoms of early medieval Britain were very similar to modern Britain today. By this, he means that Britain was full of people from all kinds of different ancestries, all sharing a common culture and language. To give you a better idea of the dates, the period of the Anglo-Saxons in England was from between the 5th and 11th centuries AD. To complete the study, researchers looked at ancient bones dating back to medieval England. They found that roughly 50% of people came from England, and the other 50% were from continental Europe. It's also interesting that the Anglo-Saxons were by definition migrants who spoke German and came from Germany in the 5th century. The people already living in England at the time were actually descendants of the Romano-Celts. In short, the new study has proved that nobody in England was ever really a native of the land. Between the occupation of the Romans, the mass migration of the Germanic-speaking people, and a huge influx of European settlers, Anglo-Saxons were nothing but a group of many different people all speaking Old English and living on the same island. Number 2. The oldest plague. A new discovery has revealed the very first person known to science to ever die from the Black Plague. The jawbone of a man was recently found in Latvia. This bone dates back 5,000 years, and scientists found the oldest strain of the bacteria which causes the Black Death inside of it. Who was this plague victim? He was a hunter-gatherer who had been in his 20s at the time of death. Until now, scientists had been struggling to figure out when exactly the virus responsible for the Black Plague, aka Great Death, aka bubonic plague, originated. It now appears that this particular strain of bacteria, which eventually caused the almost total destruction of Europe, came about 7,000 years before today, 2,000 years beyond what was previously estimated. What's truly fascinating is the strain of bacteria which caused the victim to die. It is a little different from the strain that appeared thousands of years later and decimated Europe. Scientists aren't exactly sure how the victim was affected, but they do know he died from the infection. They also know that the ancient strain of plague was not as contagious or as deadly as that which came later. The scary thing is that scientists now have physical proof that the plague bacteria evolved over millennia until it became so horrible that it almost wiped out humanity. Number 1. Mysterious Shaman's Staff. In Finland, a mysterious magical staff has been discovered dating back 4,400 years. This staff is incredible, carved in the likeness of a life-size snake. It was discovered perfectly preserved under a layer of soil about 75 miles from the capital of Helsinki. Archaeologists believe the area was inhabited by Neolithic Stone Age barbarians beginning roughly 6,000 years ago. Researchers from the University of Turku believe it was probably used in magical rituals by a designated shaman. This shaman likely communicated with spirits, or at least he said he communicated with spirits. This is so far one of the only pieces of physical evidence ever found of a magically inspired culture from Scandinavia, way before the Vikings ever appeared. As for why the staff was made to look like a giant snake, nobody's really sure. Based on ancient rock carvings found in Finland and parts of northern Russia, the practice was fairly common. They have found plenty of depictions of shamans wielding snakes. Serpents must have been regarded as especially sacred in whatever religion these people practiced, but historians can't say why. Thanks for watching! Which of these incredible discoveries did you like the most? Which one do you wish you could see in real life or want to learn more about? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you later! Bye!